Welcome back. In previous videos we have suggested that in the 7th century various Exilarchs were treated as Mahmad, i.e. as the Messiah. To some of the viewers such claims seemed far-fetched, despite the witness of Benjamin of Tudela speaking of the throne of Mahmad in conjunction with the Exilarch in the 12th century. The Chinese sources alluded to a chain of Mahmads, but is there any contemporary bona fide evidence that Jewish people thought that exilarchs such as Nehemiah ben Hushiel were the Messiah? Yes, it happens there is, but before I come to that, I want to mention a book by David C. Mitchell called Messiah ben Joseph, which is an anthology and an analysis of Jewish literature on the topic of the Messiah. It is key to understanding the concept of the Messiah, that in Jewish literature there are two Messiahs, a Messiah ben Joseph, who is a suffering servant type that atones for Israel, and there is a warrior Messiah who comes after him, who is called Messiah ben David. I'm going to now read an introduction in his book to give a better idea of this messianic pair. There is in rabbinic literature a figure called Messiah ben Joseph. This Messiah comes from Galilee to die, pierced by ruthless foes at the gate of Jerusalem. Upon his death, Israel are scattered amidst the nations, but his death, as we shall see, confounds Satan, atones for sin, and abolishes death itself, and then he is raised to life again. Now, anyone with the least idea of what divides the Abrahamic faiths must find the existence of such a figure in Jewish literature remarkable. Yet there he is, in hundreds of passages, in scores of documents of every flavour, in the Targums and Talmud, in the homiletic and exegetic midrashim, in the apocalyptic midrashim, and the Gaonic responsa, in the Hekkalot literature and the Zohar, in the Rishonim and the Aharonim. In short, he features in Jewish literature of every genre and period, in documents written by Jews for Jews, passed down from generation to generation, in Hebrew, Aramaic, Arabic, and Persian tongues, which medieval Christendom could not read, much less write. In these documents, Messiah ben Joseph always appears before his better-known comrade, Messiah ben David. Nevertheless, Messiah ben Joseph is no minor figure. On the contrary, as C.C. Torre of Yale wrote many years ago, the doctrine of the two Messiahs, i.e. ben David and ben Ephraim, holds an important place in Jewish theology. It is not a theory imperfectly formulated or only temporarily held, but a standard article of faith, early and firmly established and universally accepted. The Talmud says, Messiah ben David cannot come till Messiah ben Joseph appears. The Targum on the Song of Songs says, Ben Joseph will rule with Ben David like Aaron with Moses. It is generally held that the full inauguration of the Messianic age begins with the death of Messiah ben Joseph. And to this day, observant Jews eagerly await his coming as the beginning of the redemption. Yet, despite his importance, Messiah ben Joseph is little known and little studied. Christian scholarship was quite unaware of him till a couple of centuries ago. Indeed, the rabbis always preferred to keep him on a strictly need-to-know basis. At the Barcelona disputation, the great Ramban, when pressed by the Jewish Christian friar Pablo Cristiani to admit that the Messiah must die, did not volunteer his substantial knowledge about Ben Joseph. Instead, sensing Cristiani's ignorance of the figure, Ramban neatly sidestepped the question, declaring truly, you will not find anywhere in the world, in any book whatsoever, it may be, of the literature of Israel, and in the Talmud, or in the Haggadot, that the Messiah ben David will be put to death, nor that he will be delivered into the hands of his enemies. Ben Joseph remains little known even today. Many documents about him still remain inaccessible, untranslated, and unstudied. Commentators pass him by with brief references to brief treatises written a century ago. This lack of attention is the more remarkable since Ben Joseph raises so very many questions. As Heinemann says, what need was there for the creation of another messianic figure? Why was this second Messiah ascribed to the Joseph tribes in particular? Why and when did the strange motif of the forerunner of the Davidic Messiah, who was doomed to fall in battle, come into being? Does this figure have any connection with the suffering servant of Isaiah, or perhaps with the Christian Messiah, destined to suffer and die? But commentators confess themselves quite baffled by these questions. They say the development of this idea is completely obscure, or how it arose has been much discussed, or the origin of this ideology is totally uncertain. And although Dalman said over 100 years ago that Messiah ben Joseph is an especially important fact for the history of religions in general and for the history of the development of Christianity that deserves and even demands the most careful investigation, yet to date Dalman's modest volume of less than 30,000 words remains the largest work on the subject written. The book in your hand is therefore the first full-length text to study Messiah ben Joseph in a systematic fashion and the first ever in English. Okay, so with that out of the way, we're actually going to look at the sections in his book which gives us clear examples of Jewish belief in Jewish messiahs of the 7th century being the Exilarchs. The Midrash Otot HaMashiach, or the Signs of the Messiah, was probably written between 617, the year of Ben Hushiel's death, and 638, the year of the Arab conquest of Jerusalem. Crucially, the Midrash explicitly identifies Messiah ben Joseph with Nehemiah ben Hushiel. And here's a direct quote from the text. Messiah ben Joseph will appear, and his name is Nehemiah ben Hushiel, and with him the tribe of Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin, and some of the sons of Gad. End quote. Mitchell offers a summary of the narrative. Messiah ben Joseph, who is Nehemiah ben Hushiel, gathers the people of northern Israel. He conquers Edom, that is, Roman Byzantium, and takes the temple vessels from the palace of Julian Caesar. He goes to Jerusalem where Israel gather to him. They subjugate all the surrounding nations. Then Armalus gathers forces to the valley of Yehoshabat, as in Joel 3:12. In the ensuing battle, Messiah ben Joseph is slain at the gate of Jerusalem. His body is borne away by holy angels and hidden with the patriarchs. Israel flee into the desert for 45 days where they are purified. Then Messiah ben David appears. The Israelites gather to him, and they ascend to Jerusalem. Armalus again gathers to make war against Jerusalem, but the Holy One fights on behalf of Ben David and destroys the enemy. Messiah ben David and Elijah then raise Messiah ben Joseph from death. The scattered remnant of Israel are carried to Jerusalem on the shoulders of kings, and the 10 tribes come from Trans-Euphrates, completing the ingathering of Israel. So that's a summary of the text, but the key line really from it that concerns us is the identify Nehemiah ben Hushiel as the Messiah ben Joseph that they had long prophesied. Now, another midrash of the 10 signs, Asheret Otot, was written at a similar time, sometime from 617 to 634 AD. In the 6th sign, it says, "The Holy One, blessed be He, will produce at that time Messiah ben Joseph, whose name is Nehemiah ben Hushiel." So there we have already two separate sources that are pointing to the belief that Nehemiah ben Hushiel, who of course died in 617 AD after the conquest of Jerusalem, is the Messiah. Sections 38 to 40 of Pirkei Hekalot Rabbati, or the Great Palaces, are a messianic apocalypse. The text suggests that the Messiah ben David would appear around the year 654, which is during the reign of Bostanai. Now, crucially, it was written before that time, so it's anticipating the reign of Messiah ben David in that time frame. It says that Nehemiah ben Hushiel, a man of Ephraim ben Joseph, will appear 40 years before Messiah ben David comes, whose name is Menahem ben Amiel. And here's a direct quote from the text. 40 years before Messiah ben David comes, whose name is Menahem ben Amiel, will come Nehemiah ben Hushiel, a man of Ephraim ben Joseph, and he will stand forth in Jerusalem and cause all Israel to gather to him there. David C. Mitchell tells us that the book of Zerubbabel was an important and influential work and was known in all the main centers of medieval Judaism. Several complete manuscripts of it and fragments survive. Who is Zerubbabel that this book refers to? The Second Temple was built around 516 BC by Zerubbabel following the return of the Jews from the Babylonian exile. It was later enlarged and renovated by the Hasmoneans and Herod the Great. What is this book of Zerubbabel? The Midrash takes the form of a prophetic vision revealed to the biblical figure Zerubbabel ben Shealtiel, the second Babylonian Exilarch, who in rabbinic thought is the same person as biblical Nehemiah, the governor of Jerusalem. Since this biblical Exilarch governor, Zerubbabel Nehemiah, was the ancestor of the Exilarch governor Nehemiah ben Hushiel, the meaning of the work becomes clear. The writer wishes his contemporaries to believe that the one who built the Second Temple foresaw his descendants, the sons of Hushiel, building the Third Temple. Mitchell says that the statement that Israel's salvation will come after 990 years from the founding of the Second Temple suggests that the author hoped for deliverance around 638 AD. Since he predicts that Armilus, that is, Heraclius, will reign for 7 years and hopes for deliverance thereby, it is likely that he is writing in the mid-630s, in the last years of Byzantine rule, perhaps hoping that the growing Arab power would be Jerusalem's liberation from Byzantine Roman rule. He is therefore writing some 15 to 20 years after the death of Ben Hushiel. What is the narrative? The narrative is as follows. Messiah ben Joseph, who is Nehemiah ben Hushiel, gathers all Israel as one man, and they live in Jerusalem 4 years, reflecting Ben Hushiel's rule from 614 to 617 AD. They are attacked by the Persians but overcome them. Then Armilus attacks Jerusalem with 10 kings and kills Messiah ben Joseph and 16 righteous ones with him. Israel mourn Nehemiah ben Hushiel, who was slain and whose body was thrown before the gate of Jerusalem, untouched by beasts and birds. Israel are exiled in the wilderness. Then Messiah ben David, called Menahem ben Amiel, appears with Elijah and revives first Nehemiah and then all the dead of Israel. The blessed Lord descends upon the Mount of Olives. Messiah ben David slays Armilus, and with Nehemiah's help, Armilus's troops. Jerusalem is restored and the kingdom of God is inaugurated. Since Nehemiah ben Hushiel is clearly equated with Messiah ben Joseph, it may be that his brother Shalom, who inherited the deceased Exilarch's crown, was thought by the writer then to be Messiah ben David. So too, the picture of all-conquering and world-dominating Armilus, the Roman emperor, well suits Heraclius in his hour of victory. So some quotes from the book, from line 24, and he said to me, I am the Messiah of the Lord. Line 27 says, and I said, I've heard of your fame, for you are the Messiah of my God. And thereupon he seemed to me like a young man, perfect in beauty and loveliness, a peerless young man, and I said to him, when will the light of Israel shine? Line 30, and as I was speaking to him, behold, a winged man came to me, and he said to me that he, the winged man, was the commander of Israel's host who fought with Sennacherib and with the kings of Canaan, and he is destined to fight the war of the Lord with the Messiah of the Lord, and with the brazen-faced king, and Armilus ben Eben, who came out of the stone. Now, this strange phrase, ben Eben, had me scratching my head. What was the etymology there? Before we can truly understand the etymology of Eben, we need to know its meaning and origin. At its core, Eben is a Hebrew name that means stone or rock. So they're referring to Heraclius as the son of a rock, okay? It is derived from the word Ebenezer, which is referenced in the Old Testament as a monument of remembrance erected by Samuel on the battlefield for the Hebrews after they defeated the Philistines. I wonder, has that got any relevance to the black stone? But I digress. So they refer to Heraclius as the son of a rock, and the idea was that Satan made love to this stone, and Heraclius was the love child. So that's the idea behind it. So line 33 says, and he said to me, this is the Messiah of the Lord who is hidden here until the time of the end. And I asked Metatron, and he said to me, and when the city is built 420 years, it will be desolated a second time, and there will be 20 years of servitude to Rome, and they will make 70 kings rule in it. And when 10 kings have been completed in it, the 10th will desolate the sanctuary and cause the daily burnt offering to turn aside. And from that day, 990 years will be reckoned to you, and then will be the salvation of the Lord. That would equate to 638 AD. And he will remember his holy people to redeem them, and take them and gather them. And the staff which the Lord will give to Hephzibah, the mother of Menahem, is of almond, and it is hidden in Rakat, and it is the staff of Aaron and Moses and David, king of Israel. Now, so we're just going to move on to line 38. And he said to me, Messiah ben Joseph, which is Nehemiah ben Hushiel, will come 5 years after Hephzibah, and will gather all Israel as one man. And they will remain 4 years in Jerusalem and will offer sacrifices. And then the king of Persia will go up against Israel, and there will be great distress in Israel. And Hephzibah, wife of Nathan the prophet, will go forth with the staff which the Lord will give her, and the Lord will give them, the Persian army, a spirit of dizziness, and they will kill each other, and the wicked one will die there. Line 40 is the part where they explain the origin of their name for Heraclius ben Eben. And he took me and showed me a stone in the shape of a woman, and he said to me, Satan will lie with this stone, and it will become pregnant, and Armilus is Heraclius, will come out of it, and he will rule over all the world, and no one will stand before him, and all who will not believe in him will die by his heavy sword, and he will enter the land of Israel with 10 kings, and they will go to Jerusalem, and there will kill Messiah ben Joseph, i.e. Nehemiah ben Hushiel, and the 16 righteous ones with him, and Israel will be exiled in the wilderness, but Hephzibah, the mother of Menahem, will remain there. All the nations of the world will encamp behind this evil Satan Armilus, except Israel. All Israel will mourn Nehemiah ben Hushiel, who was slain. His corpse will be thrown before the gate of Jerusalem, but the beasts and the birds will not touch it. And he said to me, Menahem ben Amiel will come suddenly in the month of Nisan and stand on the valley of Arbel, and all the sages of Israel will go out to him. And Ben Amiel will say to them, I am the Messiah whom the Lord has sent to announce good news to you and to save you from the hand of your enemies. But the sages will regard him and despise him, like you yourself despised him. And his anger will burn in him, and he will put on garments of vengeance for clothing, and he will go to the gates of Jerusalem, and Elijah with him. And they will awaken and revive Nehemiah, and they, the sages, will believe in him. And so Metatron swore to me that for the completion of the desolation of Jerusalem, there will be 990 years, and then will be the salvation of the Lord. Menahem ben Amiel and Elijah will stand beside the great sea and read aloud from the prophets, and all the corpses of the Israelites who threw themselves into the sea because of their captivity will come out. Messiah ben David will come, and he will blow into the nostrils of Armilus, and they will kill him. All Israel will see the return of the Lord to Zion, eye to eye, like a man of war, and a helmet of salvation upon his head, and clad in a breastplate. And he will make war with Armilus and with his troops, and all of them will fall down like dead corpses in the valley of Arbel. The survivors, 5,500 of them, will escape and assemble in Selah, which is Petra. But 100,500 from Israel, clad in armor, and with Nehemiah at their head, will kill them. So what's the conclusion? I've been saying in previous videos that it looks like originally the Exilarchs were treated as Mahmads, that is, messiahs. And now we have before us prima facie evidence that that was indeed how they interpreted the times that they lived in. Nehemiah bin Hushiel was treated as Messiah bin Joseph, while later exilarchs, depending on the viewpoint of different Jewish writers, were depicted as the Messiah bin David. Some thought it was Shalom, others seemed to place him at the time of Bostonay. It would seem that in later times, these Mahmads coalesced to become a single figure of Mahmad, the Arab prophet, later to be vocalized as Muhammad. Thank you for watching.